Bird hunting and field trialing, do they ever meet? Well, we might get closer to the answer this week. I'm Scott Linden, your host on the Upland Nation podcast. We'll be talking with friend and trainer Mel Leuck. She's also a hunter and a field trialer and a vet tech, so who knows where the conversation will go. But we'll start with comparing and contrasting trialing and hunting. Stick around for that, as well as our Fix It segment where we, just something I was reminded of again recently, on getting your young pup back to you, whether it's as recall or retrieving, so a little hint there. In social media, the proverbial question, is 16 gauge the solution to all our shooting problems? Well, you weighed in on that, and boy, some of the discussions and some of the ideas are very interesting. So we'll get all of that together this week on the Upland Nation podcast, made possible by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport, Dog Food, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, RuffLand Dog Kennels, Pointer Shotguns, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz Sights. Well, I went fishing. And while that was great for me, especially the 2,000-foot elevation gain every day, we hiked from outside a wilderness area down into it and back every day. But Flick, he spent a lot of time on the couch. So we're getting back, putting in the miles, once again, earlier and earlier, trying to get him back into, better shape. He's always in good shape, but you know, you got a German dog, you know, they're always buff, aren't they? Okay, pardon my prejudice. So are the English dogs, so are the American breeds, and all those others too. Thought it would be interesting to talk about something that's been high on my list for a bunch of reasons. 16 gauge shotguns. You know, they've kind of fallen off the radar screen for a lot of people. So I thought I'd ask the question on social media about whether they are kind of the be all and the end all when it comes to shooting. And boy, I cannot tell you how much nostalgia I found on the comments section. James Inbody says, it's all I shoot. Doesn't matter, I own 6 of them. Yeah. Irving Kreiderman has been thinking of one for a long time. You're nodding your head, everybody, aren't you? Jim Matthews, my friend down in beautiful Riverside, California. Learned to love my Remington Model 11 and 16 gauge over the past year, using it over all my other shotguns. Yeah. Harry Hill got a new Fausti 16 gauge after suffering through a poorly made 20. Best money I ever spent, he said. And 16 gauge ammo is the perfect load. Cha-ching. That's the problem with that. Great all-around gun, says Robert Murphy. Yeah, I think that probably is the simplest description. George Cummins, I can't wait to see your new Satori in 16 gauge. That'll be pretty cool. An A5 Wicked Wings for Troy Stark, light with great patterns. A pleasure to carry in the field. I guess, a few ounces here or there. I understand that. That's why I'm shooting sub gauges as well. Let's see. Michael Rainwater, everyone can shoot them well. Also, it can teach shooters who think their 3-inch 20 gauges and 3.5-inch 12 gauges are long-range precision rifles. Yeah, I get it. One of the experts did an article years ago, says Mark Opulencia, about the best gauge for hunting. Top were 10, 16, and 28. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Roy D. Vidovich says his go-to is a 16 gauge new model A5. Not used a 12 gauge in 15 years. I haven't gone that far from a 12 gauge, but it's been a while, Roy. Very nice patterns, says Jay Shisau. And Michael Jarman says it works great on 5 stand. So you're getting the idea there. Patterning, a little bit lighter, easier to carry, and, a little bit of everything else in there in terms of advantages. If it wasn't for the harder to find ammo, I think more people might, these days especially, since they're back. I think Browning just reintroduced the Sweet 16, a couple of years ago. Actually, they reintroduced it a while back, and they added another version, I think, something like that. Anyway, if you're into that, you know what I'm talking about. That's what's happening in our social media. Lots of great questions on there. We'll be picking up another one that really tripped your triggers next week on the podcast, which is brought to you in part by RuffLand Kennels and their ultimate travel system for your dog. And of course, that makes your life a little bit easier. Doors that don't rattle, chew-proof doors, doors on the side of the kennel, easy to clean, new colors, etc., etc., plus all the other stuff you might need. Chow boxes, carrying their food safely, securely, and away from moisture and critters. Water hole, simple product that allows you to carry water without spilling. Dog bowls, top trays with or without water storage included. It's all there. If you want to learn more, go to RuffLandKennels.com. And hey, if you're at the point where you're bringing on a new young hunter, check out the youth model Acreus over and unders at pointershotguns.com. And for yourself, that FT12 semi-auto is available at all pointer dealers. There's something for everybody there, from the very entry-level shooter to the competitive trap, skeet, and sporting clay shooters. It's all there at pointershotguns.com. And, of course, at their local and big box retailers, from Bass Pro, Sports and Warehouse, Cabela's to Turner's Outdoorsman. And like I said, hundreds and hundreds of smaller, local, independent dealers. Go to pointershotguns.com and find the nearest dealer. Well, this one has been a while. Started a long time ago with a hunting buddy of mine, Felton. Thanks for mentioning her to me back then. And then after fits and starts and lack of electricity and who knows what else, finally on the line with me, field trialer, dog trainer, horse trainer, hunter, certified veterinary technician, Mel Leuck. Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I've definitely been a long-time listener and also get your newsletter on my email and look forward to that every time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad in the course of all of those delays and obfuscation, we did get to meet at that place where I talked. What a great facility that was.
That was pretty fun.
For the Portland, Vancouver Pointing Dog Club or something like that. Am I right?
Correct. Fort Van Pointing Dog Club.
Yeah, great group, and good to see a few old friends there and make a few new ones. I thought in particular the timing was perfect when all is said and done, because we are for you at least, we're in summer camp season, and a lot of dog handler, trainer, bird hunter types know that some of you folks go to summer camp with your dogs, but beyond that, not much else. So we'll start with a little bit of that. Tell me, put me in your place. Where are you, and what do you do on a daily basis?
We're up here in North Dakota. We're in between Tioga and Stanley. I think I'm saying that correct. Just about smack dab in the middle there. And I come up from Oregon. I've been fortunate enough to come up here with a trainer, Tom Hennis, and then he's also got Lewis Peterson up here with him, who's a horse trainer, good dog man. And I was blessed to meet him a couple of years ago and come up. I'm an amateur owner, handler, competitor. And it's just nice to come up here and get to work my dogs on these wild birds every year.
Interesting in several respects. Tell us the reason everybody goes to the Dakotas or Saskatchewan. I know a couple who go to Montana in the summertime. You mentioned wild birds, but what is it about those places that makes it worth a really long drive with, what'd you say, 10 dogs in the trailer?
Yeah, I've got 10 dogs with me. And I think for me, the reason I come up is because there's no better place to get those young dogs on the wild birds with an abundance of wild birds. The prairies, they're so open and vast, you can see a dog forever. And the amount of bird contacts you get, we can't really replicate that out where I live. We do have chukar, and that's mostly what we hunt out in Oregon. But the amount of wild bird contacts I can get here on a daily basis for a young dog, we just can't fulfill where I'm from.
Oh, yeah.
So it's well worth my drive.
Yeah. I heard somebody say years ago, the thing I like about the prairies is you can watch your dog run away for 3 days.
Absolutely.
And if you
miles and miles.
stand on a tuna fish can, you can watch them run away for a week.
And there they go.
Describe that country. I mean, we know it's relatively flat. We know it's relatively prairie, but what does that mean to folks who don't see that kind of country very often?
I think, when you first come out here, in the difference from where I'm in Oregon, where we've got chukar hills and you're climbing up huge hills every day. Out here, you've got a lot of rollers. There's not a lot of rocks. We ride the horses through here. We don't see a lot of badger holes. We've got a lot of crop fields. There's canola. There's durum. There's a lot of peas this year. And so we get a lot of the fields we're riding around. They're just starting right now to cut some of the alfalfa fields and get those baled. And then the birds, they'll kind of tend to migrate from one field to another depending on what crop is up. Once they clean the rest of the crops up and get those harvested, then you'll go to different places to find birds. They'll be more in the tree rows and whatnot. But right now we've got pretty open fields, grass fields, and a lot of alfalfa cross mix.
Nice. Yeah, and I can hear some of your dogs want to get in on the podcast too, it sounds like. And I'm good with that. Someday I will conduct an interview with a dog when I'm smart enough to figure out what they're saying. Until then, so you're lucky you got crops which keep the birds. And what kind of birds are we talking about primarily up there in, I think, northern North Dakota?
Yeah, we're pretty close to the Canadian border. We do head up a little bit more north once a week and work some dogs up there. But the birds that we see here are mostly sharptail. We see pheasants, obviously roosters. And then we also see huns. Yeah. Today we saw all 3 on our morning run.
Wow. Well, that's got to be cool. And this time of year, everybody can fly pretty well, can't they?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. We've been seeing some coveys of young birds, but they're all flying really well, and they can definitely get out of the way of the dogs.
Cool. So tell me, with the young dogs especially, but walk me through your day. Well, I'm going to imagine you're up before the sun because it's still warm up there. But what's a typical day on the prairie in summer camp?
Usually I'm up probably about 4:45, 5, and then I get my own dogs out and get them all settled for the day, and then we start getting the horses saddled, get dogs loaded in the dog boxes in the trailer, and then figure out which dogs we're bringing, get the horses loaded, and then we'll head out for our first brace. And we're fortunate here. We don't have to drive too far in the area that we're in. We hit a couple landowners and run a couple braces. Then we might load up and then hit a second spot. But usually it's where we set up, we can do 2 to 3 braces. And when we're doing braces, we're doing an hour brace.
Okay.
Most of these dogs, the older ones, we're going to get them ready for the stakes, the hour stakes. There'll be a trial coming up here in Dakota. That'll be Labor Day weekend or just after that. And the All-American Shooting Dog. And Sean Kinkler runs that. We'll be heading down to that. Probably 6 to 10 dogs in there. I'll run 2 of my own, and then Tom has a string of dogs that he'll run. So we're getting those ready for the hour stakes. Then after we run those dogs, we'll get some Derby dogs out. Those are the younger dogs. Tom may have some that he's going to run in the Derby stakes this fall. And then after that, we'll get the puppies out, and that's kind of a free for all. The puppies get to go out, and hopefully everybody has bird contacts, and that's kind of fun to see a bunch of puppies out there rolling across the country and just learning to do what they're bred to do.
Are you running a bunch of puppies together? It sounds like more than a brace.
So the puppies usually, Tom likes to run a minimum of 3 puppies, but we can run more than that. It's good for the dogs if you don't run just 2, especially the puppies, because all they like to do is kind of mess around and play and tag each other. So usually Tom will run anywhere from 3 to 5 at a time, depending on what kind of handle they have on them and that. And they just go out for about a half an hour or so out and back and kind of get their feet wet and hopefully, like I said, get into some bird contact.
Are you, what are you doing? You're on horseback, but you're watching those dogs. And the joy of horseback for me is you can see even farther than you are when you stand on a tuna fish can. So you
absolutely
you get a handle literally or figuratively on all the dogs. But what do they're running around. Let's say it's a brace of mature dogs. They're finding birds. They're hitting a point. Now what? What do you guys do next? Are you riding up on those dogs and dismounting and blanking those birds, or what happens?
Yeah, so the main thing is what they like you to do is keep your dogs when they stay in the pocket 10 and 2 as you're looking at your clock.
Yeah.
And then when they're going on point, we're riding up. The thing is, a lot of times if we are having rooster contact, then we've got to get off and you kind of got to start running because those birds are probably running.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes you end up having to relocate dogs. A lot of times they do have them pinned, and then you go in and you'll flush them, you'll blank. Your dog has to be steady through the flush and then the fire, and you walk back to them. They need to have 4 on the floor just standing there. And then you go back and you can collect your dog up, collar your dog, and then usually we'll water dogs after a find just to kind of get their mind right. And then we'll go ahead and proceed after that. So
that would be, like you said, that trial coming up in September. Kind of a graduation, if you want to call it that. But what, in the field, say tomorrow, with a younger dog, like a Derby dog, you're out there training at summer camp. What do you expect from a young dog or a pair of young dogs in the field right about now?
So my younger dogs, what I'm looking at to get out of them, if they do have bird contact, I would like to get them stopped to flush.
Yeah.
If they don't, hit a staunch point, I'd like to get them stopped to flush. If they do point and I'm able to dismount my horse, walk over and fire, that's fabulous. I'm not going to put too much pressure on my young dogs at this point. I want them to go ahead and, be happy and really focus on finding more birds.
Yeah.
And then, as the season progresses, then I can put a little bit more pressure on them in that.
Great.
Because I'm an amateur, I'm a little more cautious. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on my dogs because I've got all the time in the world to get them broke.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the trainer, they're under the pressure of the owner. They want to see their dog broke. So for me, if it takes a little bit longer to get a dog broke, I don't mind. That's just kind of my way of thinking.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good way. I mean, I'm still 8 years into my program. That's Mel Leuck. She's out there in northern North Dakota, which is better than southern South Dakota about this time of year. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Mel, I would imagine all of what you've described at summer camp takes place earlier in the morning than most of us do this stuff. But in the afternoons, are you doing, training of any sort with these dogs? It seems like a good time to work on things that don't require a lot of running, for example.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So what I'll do with the younger dogs, I kind of take advantage of the fact that Tom has a camp set up here and he's got barrel work set up.
Mm-hmm.
We've got pigeons and he's got some bobwhite here. So some of the younger dogs that I'm working on getting them a little bit more staunch and low broke, we can work on that. And then I get to definitely observe and watch as Tom's doing work on some of his younger dogs as well. So I kind of try and soak all that in while I'm here. And use that to my advantage as well. So,
yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely the afternoons. Once we get back, get the dogs settled, the horses settled, everybody off the trailer, then you can begin the yard work.
Yeah, I love it. And you're learning every day, whether it's from Tom or from the dogs or even the horses. I know a little bit about that. Do not approach a horse's back end being done. Which is better than, rodeo bulls. Do not approach the pointy end there. Don't ask how I know that. So what are the things that you have learned in the last couple of summer camps that you apply, say, in your hunting time that we should learn?
I think for me, what's really important, because my husband and I do hunt throughout the season when we get back to Oregon. We also hunt in Montana. Because without hunting, I wouldn't be able to trial. That's kind of a catch where I have there with my husband. I get to field trials and he gets hunting dogs, and that's the way it works.
It sounds like a pretty good deal, actually.
Yeah, and so we try and, for me, keeping those dogs broke in a hunting scenario is extremely important. And, I don't let each and every one of these dogs fetch when Barry shoots a bird. I have a select few that I will let retrieve, and those are, some of the older dogs that know the difference between the field trial game and the hunting game. And these dogs absolutely do know the difference. They know how to run off horseback. They know when they're hunting for the gun, huge difference. And, people always say, well, you can't hunt an all-age horseback dog. Well, yes, you can. They do know the difference. So I think that's important for me, keeping those dogs broke, letting them do their job that they were bred to do, and then letting my husband enjoy the dogs as well. That's really important.
Darling, are you listening over there? Maybe that's how we should do it around here. Actually, she's glad when I leave, but I don't.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. What do you find What do you find having to work on the most with your young to Derby age dogs? What is the most important aspect of getting them ready to hunt?
I think what's benefited me the most has been when you can get these dogs handling really well off horseback. And I think you hit that nail right on the head when you said, when you're on horse, you can see so much more. Prior to my field trialing, when we would just hunt and you'd have those young dogs, a lot of times, the dogs would go out of sight, out of foot range, and you couldn't see if they were in trouble or not, or if they were in the right area they needed to be in. Whereas, the young dogs now, when I can start them off horseback, you can see the dogs, you can focus on keeping them between 10 and 2 and getting a good handle on them. That for me, I have found has been the most important, is getting a good handle on them.
Yeah.
Once I can get a good handle on them, then I work on, getting them broke and going from there. But I think getting a good handle on it is super important.
And that's a term that I haven't heard quite as much, but I think you're talking about ensuring they stay in that pocket a little bit. So you're trying to get them back into that 10 to 2 pocket. How do you do? On horse, it might be different than on foot, but you've done both. We got a dog that, early on in their career, they just run. Sometimes they run behind me. Sometimes they run, to my left, sometimes to my right. How do you keep them into that pocket?
So I use maybe an little bit unorthodox way, but out where I live on the west area of Oregon, more the coastal range, I have an hour loop that I run once a day, and I'll take a group of young dogs out, or maybe one at a time when they're puppies. And first thing I do is I teach them that loop, and I teach them to go to the front in that loop. And I do that really, really early on. And then I transfer that to horseback where I can actually see them, let them get out there a little bit farther. For a young dog, I don't want a 3-month-old puppy running 800 yards because that's just not safe.
Yeah.
So if I have to, the training collars that I use are the Sport Dog, and they have a tone, they have a vibration, and then of course they have the e-collar nick. So when they're little, I teach them to the tone to come here, and then they learn really quickly when they hear that, beep, beep, we call it, I'm dialing them up.
Yeah.
So it's like me calling them on the phone saying, hey, get over here now. And so they learn when I'm beeping them, they got to get out to the front or get to where I am. And they learn that early on and then graduate from there. So that's probably the easiest way for me to teach them. I think different people would do it different ways. Some people go straight to the E-stem. For me, I use the tone first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that idea. And it makes so much sense in a lot of ways. It's almost like you said, I'm calling them up. They're kind of learning what the call is for, and they follow. Yep. And you're moving in the direction you want as well at that point, aren't you? Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm moving forward, whether I'm on a single track trail and I'm running, jogging, whatever, or whether I'm on horseback and we're in a field and moving forward. We're always trying to keep them in that 10 and 2.
Yeah.
And you can see them really well when you're on horseback. And you've also got your GPS. You don't want them, obviously, if you can see on your GPS they're running behind you, you better tone them and, get them back to the front.
Yeah. If they don't obey, and I'm asking for a friend, and they're behind you because there's a chipmunk under that fallen log, what's the continuum of force that you would use on a young to derby age dog?
So for me, like I said, first I'll dial them up, I'll give them a little tone, like, hey, are you listening? And then if they're not listening, then I'll go ahead and I'll, give them a nick on a 1. Yeah. And then I have the Sport Dog. It goes low, medium, and then high. So I'll start with the lowest amount of pressure possible. And I test these on myself to make sure that I know what we're doing. So I want to make sure they're working before I put them on the dog. And so, I'll turn them on, test them, and if I can feel it, and so I have a general idea of, and most of my dogs are really, really super easy. They don't need you to turn anything up very high. They're bred to be pretty biddable.
Love it. Well, we'll have more on what kind of dogs those are and many more training tips from Mel Leuck coming up in the second half of the Upland Nation podcast, as well as our Fix It segment where, it's kind of related. When turning your back on a puppy is a good idea. It's all coming up right after a couple commercial messages, including one from Pro Plan Sport dog food. One brand fuels the most sporting dog champions. Hey, we're talking about field trials, and you know it, and I know it. Yeah, those dogs are out to win the game, but so are you every day you go into the field. Take a look at ProPlansport.com. Find a formulation that works for you. Meat is the number one ingredient. 30% protein, 20% fat, great tasting. It fuels your dog's energy throughout the day and throughout the season, including all the ingredients that help a dog's VO2 max for increased endurance. Learn more at ProPlansport.com and come on over to my side, Pro Plan Sport Dog Food. And just got an email from my friend Fred Bohm at sageandbreaker.com. The shot shell cases and the choke tube cases are now all in stock. Beautiful saddle leather, heirloom quality. If you're looking for something to use and then hand down with that nice wore out patina on it to your next and your next and your next heirs, go to sageandbreaker.com. Take a look at all of the storage and gun care and cleaning gear that they have, from the soft goods like a shotgun case and the new shot shell and choke tube cases, all the way down to the stuff you spray on or wipe on to keep your firearm in good shape, rust-free, and clean. Learn more at sageandbreaker.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. Mel Leuck, somewhere in northern North Dakota. You know, I remember I actually had a boss in the music business from way up there. It was always that dark blue line in the wintertime on the USA Today weather map. It was the coldest place in the country, wasn't it? Well, you're not there for that, though.
No.
You are a chucker hunter. You ever hunt on horseback, or is it just too much trouble?
You know, I have not hunted chucker on horseback. Where we hunt, there's just too many barbed wire fences.
Yeah.
And getting up and down, and I just don't know if I'd want to ride a horse up and down some of those hills that we walk up and down. With the rocks and everything, just a little bit too sketchy.
Oh, I'll tell you, I don't know how he did it. The veterinarian who helped me through my entire bird dog career so far rides Tennessee walkers up there all the time, and I don't know how many. Wow. I don't know. I don't even want to think about his farrier bill, but
oh my gosh,
you know what I mean. Tell me, tell me about your dogs and what you love so much about working with them.
Well, I run pointers. They're LHU bred pointers, and I originally got my dogs from Mel Feifel, who Hampshire Kennels, and I call her the mother of LHU. She's the one that actually holds the LHU prefix that was handed down to her from Bob Whaley.
Wow.
And I got to be friends with her years and years ago, and we just kind of got in together, and I co-owned some dogs with her, and she's not into the field trialing anymore, and so I run some dogs that we've co-owned, and we've bred a few litters together in that, and I just really have always been enamored with the pointers. We've had, Barry and I have had English setters, we've had short hairs. Growing up in Utah, I remember the first bird dog that I ever came in contact with, we had a red setter that my grandma had, and that's probably the first I ever had been around bird dogs. My neighbors, they had labs, and they did a lot of trialing with their labs. They had excellent waterfowl dogs. Great dogs, and it just kind of, when I met my husband, it just kind of exploded, and we went from one to the next.
I love it. When you're out there in the field, whether it's out there at summer camp or even at home in the yard or in the field out there, one of the most common questions I get is about how to teach a dog to be steady. You've alluded to what I think is the number one rule, and that is a lot of bird contact. A dog can effectively, to a great degree, teach itself part of that. But beyond that, walk me through your process for getting a dog to hold still while you walk up and fly a bird.
I think I've probably been mentored by a lot of different people. I've been blessed to have had some really, really exceptional mentors that have helped me. And, without them, I wouldn't even be where I am right now. I think, like you said, the number one thing is bird contact. The smart dogs, they will almost teach themselves. We've had some, I know years ago, that came and you'd think they came out of the womb trained steady, and it was just easy as could be. And then there's others that have been a little bit more what I think you refer to as black-hearted, and they've been a little tougher. But I think ultimately repetition and patience and getting the dog to understand before you start the next step. I think that's the most important thing. For me, I do a little bit of place training. We've got a table that we work on, and we do a lot of the obedience and even some of the whoa and steady work without birds involved. So the dog understands what woe means before that extra piece is thrown in. I had a good experience earlier this spring and got to work with some friends working on some stop to flush on the young dogs, and that has completely turned a whole new key up here with some of the young ones, because if they can get their stop to flush, I can correct them if they move after that, and that's when I would use the e-collar. But most of them, if you can get a lot of the obedience and the yard work done firsthand, that helps tremendously. I don't take them out and run them on birds to start when I'm running them off horseback. Like I said, going back to getting that handle on them first, and then working the obedience and the yard work, and doing that without a lot of birds, so they understand completely what woe means before that next step is put into place.
So, and I think you're describing a process that I've learned over the years and years, and again, refined, much like you described earlier, changed in the last year or so. And that is, the first part is, once a dog scents a bird and hits a point, it's not instinctive anymore. They should understand that as an obedience command. Am I on the right track with you?
Well, and I think a little bit. I think, up here where we've got the young dogs, where they haven't been up here to summer camp before, and they're just now starting to get a grasp on, what they're doing here, they're probably going to knock a few birds the first time, or maybe, they don't know how to enter, in the correct scent of the wind cone, all those things come into play. And so if they're going to knock a few birds, what I want to do, I don't want them to chase. So I want to get them stopped.
Okay.
And if they understand whoa, and I can get them stopped, then the rest will all follow through. At least it has for my dogs. Because some of these young dogs that haven't been up here to the prairie before and haven't had this opportunity, they are going to knock birds. I just don't want them to chase a bird a mile away. So if they knock a few birds and I can get them stopped, and then we kind of work forward from there, and then bring them back on our yard work again, let's work on our woe, and then reintroduce, pigeons or quail in the yard work, and then get them back out in the field. It all kind of is a puzzle piece that comes together.
Yeah.
I don't know as if it's any one certain little piece, but it has to be an intricate group of pieces, and they all fit together. At least that is for me.
Well, I've talked with a lot of legendary trainers who all have a different way of getting a dog not to chase.
Sure.
How do you do it?
Well, so back to that, I think if we're sitting there and we come across a bird and the dog does happen to hit a point and is looking really good, I'm not going to nick him. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let the dog do their job. Now, if they move and then the bird lifts because the dog has decided they are going to put pressure on the bird, then I'm probably going to give them a little bit of a reprimand, meaning maybe I'm going to nick them a little bit on a one low. And if they understand whoa, if I say whoa at the same time I nick them, then we're good.
Yeah.
If the spray drive is, out of control, then they might decide to jump up in the air and run 10, 20 feet after the bird. I might have to turn it up to a 2. Got
it. But before you're doing anything with that, the black box, the dog knows what the word means.
Sure. They need to understand that, and they need to also understand what I'm doing with the electricity. It's not like you want to go out there and just, shock. They have to understand this means whoa, and what the pressure means and what the release means. Same thing, with the horse, pressure and release. The pressure is not what is going to break the dog. It's the release of pressure. So they understand when they release the pressure. Same thing with the horse. You're not going to stop a horse by continually pulling on the mouth. You've got to release pressure.
Yeah. Love it. And you are in good company, as you well know. There are many great dog trainers who were, or even still are, horse trainers as well. Do you see any other parallels between the two critters?
They're pretty similar in some respects. I think, the repetition and the patience is the important thing. And then I heard somewhere the rule of 3, and this was with horses, you have to do 3 days a week, do things consistently in order for a horse to learn. And I think, the same thing for the dogs. If you do a day and then you skip a day, or you skip 2 days and then you go back the fourth day and try to get back where you were the first day, dog might not understand that. I think you have to do things in a consistent fashion and then work forward once they understand what you're asking.
It's so true. And I'll sit there, on day 3 and think, I just don't feel like doing that today.
Right.
And then I regret it. I remember back in the music business when your teacher would tell you, "Oh, don't lay off because it'll take 2 days to get back." It's true.
It is. And the thing is, even on those days when it's raining in Oregon and it's rained for 10 days straight, I still have to do something with the dogs. It might not be, a 10-mile run, but I still have to do something. It might have to be place work in the garage, or, something, heel down the driveway. I mean, just different things to get something done and get your hands on them every single day.
Yeah, there's probably some lessons from B.F. Skinner, the world-famous psychiatrist, on the learning process there. But let's go to something even more fundamental than that. Up there, down here in the high desert of Oregon, or anywhere else, this time of year, I'm worried about the heat and my dogs. What do you do to besides just abbreviating your sessions or cutting the day early? Obviously, putting dogs in shade and that sort of thing. Is there anything else you do to keep your dogs cool? Do you have a magic formula? You put in their water or anything?
I think it's really important, and I guess from my veterinary standpoint, temperature and humidity, super, super important. You have to be able to read your dog, and you have to be able to know when to call it quits. Your dog might want to go for another hour, and that hour might kill that dog.
Yeah.
So for me, I carry a lot of water on my horse. If I'm on foot, I carry a lot of water in my pack. The water is for my dogs always, not for me. I do use a different powder that the name of it eludes me at the moment, but it was designed for the sled dogs by a veterinarian, and she's actually in Bend, Oregon.
Oh, I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do that. Yeah. And usually, if I'm going to do a really hard hunt, or if it's really hot, I'll give them a paste mix. I'll mix some of that up with some water and give them that beforehand. And then also when we get back. But I think the main thing is knowing how to read your dog, keeping them hydrated. If it's getting too hot, you need to call them in, water them up, get their body wet. The recent thing, I think they had that article and video about dousing the head and then, also the belly, and that it's really easy to overheat these dogs, and they will go and go and go until they drop. And so we, as the human counterpart, really have to be on the ball and keeping an eye on those dogs. And if I think they're getting too hot, I'll just pull them, I'll rest them, I'll put them in harness, and I'll road them back to camp. Luckily, it's been pretty decent up here, and we've got good mornings. But when the humidity and the tall grass, it gets up there, and those dogs, they're so much hotter down there than we are, where we've got a breeze up above that on the horse. So I think the main thing is just really, really watch those dogs, and also know your dogs and know what kind of stress they can take. Because I've got some that can handle the heat, and I've got some big males that they cannot handle the heat. So I know, I got to pull them sooner than the females sometimes.
Yeah, I'll never forget. This was driven home to me many, many, many years ago in California on a TV shoot. We were working some shrub, some high-growing, low-growing shrub. And I finally put my hand down underneath that ground cover. And it was easily 10 degrees warmer there at dog level than it was where I was standing.
I bet.
It's amazing. And if you have a dark-colored dog, hey, everybody, take your dog, run them for a while in the sun, and then touch their back. It's dang hot. But when and you've got some veterinary training. So what is the key indicator of an overheating dog?
The dogs that I have seen, or that I have seen people run, when they get overheated, they seem to be a little bit disoriented. They'll tend to kind of get wobbly and stagger a little bit behind. Some may completely collapse.
Yeah.
The main thing, if you're getting those dogs overheated, you're burning those internal organs. And once we fry those internal organs, some of them, like the kidneys and whatnot, you're not going to get back. So, you're causing deadly damage to those animals. So even though they can and will sometimes run in that heat, it's still our job to keep them safe.
Well, and there's some more obvious things that earlier on when you can do more about it, they walk at heel, for example, or they slow down, or they're digging holes and laying in the holes or laying in the shade somewhere. Those are all critical to me, and I keep an eye on those things as well, working out here in the desert.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about hunting because, hey, it's my favorite subject. Whether it's chuckers, sharp tails out there, or anything in between, what are some of the things you use on a regular basis to ensure your dogs are going to be at their peak? I mean, strategy or tactics in the field, where you start, what you look for. How do you help your dogs become rock stars in a bird field?
I think for me, conditioning is the number one thing. If your dog is not conditioned, and then also weight, you have to be at an optimal weight. You also have to be in really good condition, because as we know, even as people and athletes, if we're not in condition and we're not in proper weight, injuries are more prone. And I've seen that in the veterinary field time and time again. We'll have someone come in and they're a weekend warrior and they've gone chucker hunting, or they've gone up to Montana. They've got 6 weeks off and they've got the glorious first, and they're going to go up and hunt and hunt and hunt. And they haven't done anything with their dog except for the last week before hunting season. They decided to pop a bird on them with a launcher. And they get up there, and sure enough, they blow their pads or they tear an ACL. Just one thing after another, we get calls or messages from friends and clients. And so I think the number one thing is, getting that dog in condition, keeping that dog in condition. If you can't keep that dog in condition, send it to a trainer, 60, 90 days before your big hunt, and let them get the dog in condition properly. Don't expect them to go out there and be this athlete that they'd love to be, but they just can't. I think that's the most important thing, conditioning and weight, and then feeding them a good, proper diet. They need the nutrition and they need the K-cows in there to work those long days.
What about getting there? You're the poster child for traveling with dogs, whether it's to summer camp or even to any of your hunting destinations. Have you learned something that we haven't even thought about that could help us be better, help our dogs have a better travel experience?
I think on the long hauls for me, especially when I've got a lot of dogs on board, I do have a dog room in the back of the crates. They all have fans on them. I've got those little, I think, Aerobi fans, and I set those. One thing we tried to experiment with this year was we had some dry ice so that the dog room could be filtered, have some dry ice, some cooling, and some fans going, and that actually worked really well, because there's times when we unfortunately have to travel and it's pushing 90 degrees out, and even though I've got the vents and the fans and everything else going on the dogs, it still can get pretty hot. The other thing I do, I carry a thermometer back there, and it will read to my truck up front, and it will alert if the temperature or the humidity is in a dangerous zone. And of course, then I want to, double check and make sure the dogs, everything are okay when we're traveling. That's really important. So I would definitely recommend, having some type of a temperature gauge in the dog room.
You said dry ice, and I've got a setup that I probably stole from somebody else years ago. It involves a cooler with a fan that blows into the cooler and blows the cold air out through a pipe. Right at my
that's
dog.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
Look into that. I'll send you a picture. Because it works pretty well, and it's self-contained. You got to have a battery of some sort, but beyond that, it does work. And I'm going to try some dry ice next time.
It just, that was kind of, a friend had suggested that, and I was like, oh yeah, we should try that.
Yeah, good. Love it. I can't leave you, especially with your background as a veterinary technician on top of everything else. And I know that you have a fresh experience to relate this to. But I know a few dogs who have had a few porcupine encounters over the years, and you're probably the expert at this.
Oh my gosh!
So walk
every
us
year.
through it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's really not funny, but it's funny. We do at least one encounter a year. It's usually a young dog. Sometimes it's an older dog, but the young dogs, they haven't seen them before. Some will go in, and I've had dogs point them and growl, and then I know we're in trouble, and I can get them out of there.
Yeah.
Other dogs, they go in, and they just got to get a little taste of that. And sure enough, they come out, and then they either learn or then they want to go back for revenge. And I've had both types. We had, one the other day, a young dog get into his first porcupine, and he was in there with a brother, a litter mate, and the litter mate had one last year. So they were both in the bush at the same time, and one ran out clean because he got his taste last year, and the other one came out with a mouthful of quills. So yeah, that's always fun. So we take them back to the truck. 9 times out of 10, you can get everything out pretty successfully, pretty easily. Sometimes, like this pup the other day, we did have to give him a little bit of sedation and then pull those quills because he just was having no part of it. And there's no point in stressing the animal out at that point.
Yeah.
It's, you got to perform kindness over brute force at that point. But most of the time you can do everything in the field. Some people, whether you've got tissue forceps or you've got a Leatherman's pair of needle nose pliers, everybody has their favorite go-to. And then, we just start pulling those quills out, and hopefully you can get them all out with having to make no trip to the vet. But like I said, the other day that pup ended up having to have a little sedation. And then about a week later, we took 2 more out, and the one that got quilled last week, he went in with a setter, and the setter came out this time, and he had to take a bite of it, but the pup learned his lesson from the last week, so that was good.
Wow. I'm reminded of the $100 magic quill that I had to buy out one day. And then the old favorite dog trainer axiom: a friend will hold your dog. Only a good friend will hold your dog while you pull quills.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
So the big question is: do you cut the tips off before you pull them?
Usually we just go ahead and just straight pull them.
Yeah.
If the dog is sedated, either or. But usually they're not going to give us the time of day to be too accurate about it. So if we can go in and if we can just get those, removed as quickly as possible, and there are sometimes you'll go back a week later, even a month later, and you'll miss something. And sure enough, it works its way out. So we're always kind of aware of that. Most dogs recover off them pretty well. Those that get them in the mouth, they're a little bit tougher. They might not eat for a day or so, but most dogs are pretty good about it. Once you get them out, they'll even continue to go on hunting and not have a problem.
Well, good. That's good advice. And I want you to leave us with one bit of equipment that you use on a regular basis that we probably ought to carry with us on our next bird hunt.
Oh my gosh. Well, for me, it's always extra batteries because my GPS will die. And then I'm always having to ask my husband, do you have some spare batteries?
Yeah,
I've got to remember to always have my batteries on me. I'm bad about that.
Yeah.
But usually, I think everybody has pretty much their go-to, what they use, what they need. I do carry a Leatherman. I do carry tissue forceps. I do carry, some of the hemostats. Those are all in there. I will actually, if I'm hunting and it's winter, I'll carry those little honey sticks that you can just, if a dog's getting hypoglycemic or something.
Yeah.
I'll take some of those because we did have a dog a few years ago that did have a bout of that, and that helped kind of get her back to the truck without too much issue.
Yeah.
Those are kind of nice, and then I don't have to have a big mess all over the place. I just break one of those honey sticks open and give them some Nutrical. That works well.
Mm-hmm.
I try to think of everything I can to have in my pack in an emergency, but when it all comes down to it, the best thing for me is to get them out of the field as quickly as possible. And then my husband and I, of course, we carry emergency supplies in the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I carry a kit that is designed for two things: to keep us in the hunt or to get us back to the truck and the breakneck drive to the veterinarian.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Well, there you have it. She's at summer camp. I bet you're not braiding any lanyards or having a lot of campfire marshmallow roasts, because you're pretty beat after a day of doing what you're doing up there in your summer camp. That's Mel Leuck, trialer, trainer, bird hunter, veterinary technician, and good friend. I'm glad we finally could connect on this. It's been a long time. Off mic sometime soon, drop me a note on when you're going to be in Montana. We'll have a beer or something.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see you again in person. In the meanwhile, thanks so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
No, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
All right. Stay cool out there.
Oh, you too. Thanks so much, Scott.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, but not you. We've still got the Fix It segment. I'm going to offer up a suggestion that works. Some people call it a hack, but it's a way to get your pup back to you, whether they're carrying that first quail or they're just being a butt. It's coming up in the Fix It segment after this word from TrulockChokes.com. As I mentioned a while back, Scott Trulock, he's really glommed onto the sub-gauge thing. And so have we. Earlier we talked about 16s, which I guess technically are a sub-gauge as well. If you've got a nice side-by-side and you'd like to put some great TrulockChokes in there, but you don't want those chokes that kind of stick out a little bit, well, Scott will make you, at no extra charge, he will make you flush fit choke tubes for your classic side-by-side. All you got to do is call him up and find out what kind of choke tubes are perfect for you. He'll walk you through it, and then they will customize your own side-by-side sub-gauge flush fit chokes. Will anyone else do that for you? I doubt it. Go to TrulockChokes.com, get the phone number, ask for Scott Trulock. Shouldn't be too hard to remember that first name. And let him make you a better shooter with one simple fix. If you need another fix, these didn't go together all the time, but they do with me, and that is HiVizSights.com. They're on top of my TrulockChokes because they work for me. On top of all the other problems, I have enough trouble, but I can see the muzzle of the shotgun with those light pipes while I'm focusing literally on the flying target. You match them up, you pull your trigger, and then you tell your dog to fetch. It's that simple. Those colored light pipes allow you to never lose the bead of the shotgun, such as it is, while you're focusing on the target. I worked really hard on putting what I think is a fairly clear video of the idea. Go to HiVizSights.com. Watch the video and see what you've been missing. HiVizSights.com. Well, remember in the old days, the bad guys would look at each other as the good guys were coming towards them, and they'd say, "Run for it." Well, it helps at one point or another when you're training your young dog as well. Okay, maybe you can just walk fast, but the idea is there are some great times to turn your back on a pup that's not coming all the way in. If you're having trouble and you're at that point in his evolution, or you just need a hack because you need to salvage that retrieve or something like that, walk away or run away. Your pup doesn't want to be left behind. He's going to come and get in front of you because he wants to see your face, even my face, made for radio. Turn your back, walk or run away, and see if your pup will catch up to you, essentially. That's an easy way to, if nothing else is working, get your dog to bring back that bird, that bumper, or just his own little fuzzy face. run for it to help your recall and your retrieving. Fix It is brought to you this week by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Once you learn how to shoot from Dave and Vandy and everybody over there, you sure want your dog to bring it all the way back. Speaking of sub-gauges, midvalleyclays.com is where you ought to start your shopping trip for a sub-gauge gun, especially a Browning. Big additions to the inventory of field-grade Brownings available now. Dave Fiedler's the guy to start with. He will counsel you on, what might be the right gun for you in your situation. So before you get too far down that road, call Dave. Get the number at midvalleyclays.com. Call Dave Fiedler. Counsel with him. And then when you're ready to pull the trigger, Dave can ship your gun anywhere, anytime, any gauge, any style, any brand. midvalleyclays.com. Well, thank you, Mel Leuck, for making time out of a busy summer camp to talk with us and enlighten us as to, all sorts of fun stuff. Sure appreciate that. And thank you if you commented at the social platforms. Great comments there and more coming, so please participate in the discussion. You never know, you might hear yourself right here. If you leave a rating, I'm very grateful, at Apple Podcasts in particular. And then thank you to all our sponsors, and thank you if you are purchasing from them. They include RuffLand Dog Kennels, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Mel mentioned the newsletter. If you'd like to get in on that, there's always something of interest to you and might help you become a better shooter, dog handler, or hunter. Just go to findbirdhuntingspots.com and sign up right there. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks so much for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.